Hello and welcome to Daily Prayer Today, weekend edition for September 26, 2020. We're reading Genesis chapter 46 through 50, finishing up the readings for this week, finishing up the story of Joseph, and looking at that. So let's go ahead and get started. So Joseph went and told Pharaoh, "My father and my brothers, with their flocks and herds and all they possess, have come from the land of Canaan. They are now in the land of Goshen." From among his brothers he took 5 men and presented them to Pharaoh. Pharaoh said to his brothers, "What is your occupation?" And they said to Pharaoh, "Your servants are shepherds, as our ancestors were." They said to Pharaoh, "We have come to reside as aliens in the land, for there is no pasture for your servants' flocks, because the famine is severe in the land of Canaan. Now we ask you, let your servants settle in the land of Goshen." Then Pharaoh said to Joseph, "Your father and your brothers have come to you. The land of Egypt is before you. Settle your father and your brothers in the best part of the land. Let them live in the land of Goshen, and if you know that there are capable men among them, put them in charge of my livestock." Then Pharaoh brought to his father Jacob and presented him before Pharaoh, and Jacob blessed Pharaoh. Pharaoh said to Jacob, "How many are the years of your life?" Jacob said to Pharaoh, "The years of my earthly sojourn are 130. Few and hard have been the years of my life. They do not compare with the years of the life of my ancestors during their long sojourn." Then Jacob blessed Pharaoh and went out from the presence of Pharaoh. Joseph settled his father and his brothers and granted them a holding in the land of Egypt, in the best part of the land, in the land of Ramesses, as Pharaoh had instructed. And Pharaoh provided his father, his brothers, and all his father's household with food according to the number of their dependents. Now there was no food in the land, for the famine was very severe. The land of Egypt and the land of Canaan languished because of the famine. Joseph collected all the money to be found in the land of Egypt and in the land of Canaan, in exchange for the grain that they brought. And Joseph brought the money into Pharaoh's house. When the money from the land of Egypt and from the land of Canaan was spent, all the Egyptians came to Joseph and said, "Give us food. Why should we die before your eyes? For our money is gone." And Joseph answered, "Give me your livestock, and I will give you food in exchange for your livestock, if your money is gone." So they brought their livestock to Joseph, and Joseph gave them food in exchange for the horses, the flocks, the herds, and the donkeys. That year he supplied them with food in exchange for all their livestock. When that year was ended, they came to him the following year and said to him, "We cannot hide from my lord that our money is all spent, and the herds of cattle are my lord's. There is nothing left in the sight of my lord but our bodies and our lands. Shall we die before your eyes, both we and our land? Buy us and your land in exchange for food. We with our land will become slaves to Pharaoh. Just give us seed so that we may live and not die, and that the land may not become desolate." So Joseph bought all the land of Egypt for Pharaoh. All the Egyptians sold their fields because the famine was severe upon them, and the land became Pharaoh's. As for the people, he made slaves of them from one end of Egypt to the other. Only the land of the priests he did not buy, for the priests had a fixed allowance from Pharaoh, and lived on the allowance that Pharaoh gave them. Therefore they did not sell their land. Then Joseph said to the people, "Now that I have this day bought you and your land for Pharaoh, here is seed for you. Sow the land, and at the harvest you shall give 1/5 to Pharaoh, and 4/5 shall be your own, as seed for the field, as food for yourselves and your households, and as food for your little ones." They said, "You have saved our lives. May it please my lord, we will be slaves to Pharaoh." So Joseph made it a statute concerning the land of Egypt, and it stands to this day that Pharaoh should have the 5th. The land of the priests alone did not become Pharaoh's. Thus Israel settled in the land of Egypt, in the region of Goshen, and they gained possession in it, and were fruitful and multiplied exceedingly. Jacob lived in the land of Egypt for 17 years, so the days of Jacob, the years of his life, were 147 years. When the time of Israel's death drew near, he called his son Joseph and said to him, "If I have found favor with you, put your hand under my thigh and promise to deal loyally and truly with me. Do not bury me in Egypt. When I lie down with my ancestors, carry me out of Egypt and bury me in their burial place." He answered, "I will do as you have said." And he said, "Swear to me." And he swore to him. Then Israel bowed himself on the head of his bed. After this, Joseph was told, "Your father is ill." So he took with him his 2 sons, Manasseh and Ephraim. When Jacob was told, "Your son Joseph has come to you," he summoned his strength and sat up in bed. And Jacob said to Joseph, "God Almighty appeared to me at Luz in the land of Canaan. He blessed me and said to me, 'I am going to make you fruitful and increase your numbers. I will make of you a company of peoples. I will give you this land to your offspring after you for a perpetual holding.' Therefore, your 2 sons, who were born to you in the land of Egypt before I came to you in Egypt, are now mine. Ephraim and Manasseh shall be mine, just as Reuben and Simeon are. As for the offspring born to you after them, they shall be yours. They shall be recorded under the names of their brothers with regard to their inheritance. For when I came from Paddan, Rachel, alas, died in the land of Canaan and on the way, while there was still some distance to go to Ephrath, and I buried her there on the way to Ephrath, that is, Bethlehem." When Israel saw Joseph's son, he said, "Who are these?" Joseph said to his father, They are my sons, whom God has given me here." And he said, "Bring them to me, please, that I may bless them." Now the eyes of Israel were dim with age, and he could not see well. So Joseph brought them near him, and he kissed them and embraced them. Israel said to Joseph, "I did not expect to see your face in here. God has let me see your children also." Then Joseph removed them from his father's knees, and he bowed himself with his face to the earth. Joseph took them both, Ephraim at his right hand towards Israel's left, and Manasseh on his left hand towards Israel's right, and brought them near him. But Israel stretched out his hand and laid it on the head of Ephraim, who was the younger, and his left hand on the hand of Manasseh, crossing his hands, for Manasseh was the firstborn. He blessed Joseph and said, "The God before whom my ancestors Abraham and Isaac walked, the God who has been my shepherd all my life to this day, the angel who has redeemed me from all harm, bless the boys, and in them let my name be perpetuated, and the name of my ancestors Abraham and Isaac, and let them grow into a multitude on the earth." When Joseph saw that his father laid his right hand on the head of Ephraim, it displeased him. So he took his father's hand to remove it from Ephraim's head to Manasseh's head. Joseph said to his father, "Not so, my father. Since this one is the firstborn, put your right hand on his head." But the father refused. He said, "I know, my son, I know. He also shall become a people, and he also shall be great. Nevertheless, his younger brother shall be greater than he, and his offspring shall become a multitude of nations." So he blessed them that day, saying, "By you Israel will invoke blessing, saying, 'God make you like Ephraim and like Manasseh.'" So he put Ephraim ahead of Manasseh. Then Israel said to Joseph, "I am about to die, but God will be with you and will bring you again to the land of your ancestors. I now give to you one portion more than to your brothers, the portion that I took from the hand of the Amorites with my sword and with my bow." Then Jacob called his sons and said, "Gather around that I may tell you what will happen to you in days to come. Assemble and hear, O sons of Jacob. Listen to Israel your father. Reuben, you are my firstborn, my might and the firstfruits of my vigor, excelling in rank and excelling in power. unstable as water. You shall no longer excel, because you went up onto your father's bed. Then you defiled it. You went up on my couch. Simeon and Levi are brothers. Weapons of violence are their swords. May I never come into their council. May I not be joined to their company. For in their anger they killed men, and at their whim they hamstrung oxen. Cursed be their anger, for it is fierce, and their wrath, for it is cruel. I will divide them in Jacob, and scatter them in Israel. Judah, your brothers shall praise you. Your hand shall be on the neck of your enemies. Your father's son shall bow down before you. Judah is a lion's whelp. From the prey, my son, you have gone up. He crouches down, he stretches out like a lion, like a lioness who dares rouse him up. The scepter shall not depart from Judah, nor the ruler's staff from between his feet, until tribute comes to him. And the obedience of the peoples is his, binding his foal to the vine, and his donkey's colt to the choice vine. He washes his garments in wine, and his robe in the blood of grapes. His eyes are darker than wine, and his teeth whiter than milk. Zebulun shall settle in the shore of the sea. He shall be a haven for ships, and his border shall be at Sidon. Issachar is a strong donkey, lying down between the sheepfolds. He saw that a resting place was good, and that the land was pleasant, so he bowed his shoulder to the burden, and became a slave at forced labor. Dan shall judge his people as one of the tribes of Israel. Dan shall be a snake by the roadside, a viper along the path, that bites the horse's heels, so that its rider falls backwards. I wait for your salvation, O Lord. Gad shall be raided by raiders, but he shall raid at their heels. Asher's food shall be rich, and he shall provide royal delicacies. Naphtali is a doe let loose, that bears lovely fawns. Joseph is a fruitful bough by a spring. His branches run over the wall. The archers fiercely attacked him. They shot at him and pressed him hard. Yet his bow remained taut, and his arms were made agile. By the hands of the mighty one of Jacob, by the name of the shepherd, the rock of Israel, by the God of your father who will help you, by the Almighty who will bless you, with blessings of heaven above, blessings of the deep that lies beneath, blessings of the breasts and the womb. The blessing of your father are stronger than the blessings of the eternal mountains, the bounties of the everlasting hills. May they be on the head of Joseph, on the brow of him who is set apart from his brothers. Benjamin is a ravenous wolf, in the morning devouring the prey, and at evening dividing the spoil. All these are the 12 tribes of Israel, and this is what their father said to them when he blessed them, blessing each one of them with a suitable blessing. Then he charged them, saying to them, I am about to be gathered to my people. Bury me with my ancestors, in the cave in the field of Ephron the Hittite, in the cave in the field of Machpelah, near Mamre, in the land of Canaan, in the field that Abraham bought from Ephron the Hittite as a burial site. There Abraham and his wife Sarah were buried. There Isaac and his wife Rebekah were buried. And there I buried Leah. The field and the cave that is in it were purchased from the Hittites. When Jacob ended his charge to his sons, he drew up his feet into the bed, breathing his last, and was gathered to his people. After Joseph threw himself on his father's face and wept over him and kissed him, Joseph commanded the physicians in his service to embalm his father. So the physicians embalmed Israel. They spent 40 days in doing this, for that is the time required for embalming, and the Egyptians wept for him for 70 days. When the days of weeping for him were past, Joseph addressed the household of Pharaoh. If now I have found favor with you, please speak to Pharaoh as follows. My father made me swear an oath. He said, I am about to die in the tomb that I hewed for myself in the land of Canaan. There you shall bury me. Now therefore let me go up so that I may bury my father. Then I will return. Pharaoh answered, Go up and bury your father, as he made you swear to do. So Joseph went up to bury his father. With him went up all the servants of Pharaoh, the elders of his household, and all the elders of the land of Egypt, as well as all the household of Joseph, his brothers and his father's household. Only their children, their flocks, and their herds were left in the land of Goshen. Both chariots and charioteers went up with him. It was a very great company. When they came to the threshing floor of Atad, which is beyond the Jordan, they held there a very great and sorrowful lamentation. And he observed a time of mourning for his father for 7 days. When the Canaanite inhabitants of the land saw the mourning on the threshing floor of Atad, they said, "This is a grievous mourning on the part of the Egyptians." Therefore the place was named Abel Mizraim. It is beyond the Jordan. Thus the sons did for him as he had instructed them. They carried him to the land of Canaan and buried him in the cave of the field at Machpelah, the field near Mamre, which Abraham bought as a burial site from Ephron the Hittite. After he had buried his father, Joseph returned to Egypt with his brothers and all who had gone up with him to bury his father. Realizing that their father was dead, Joseph's brothers said, "What if Joseph still bears a grudge against us and pays us back in full for all the wrong that we did to him?" So they approached Joseph, saying, "Your father gave this instruction before he died. Say to Joseph, I beg you forgive the crime of your brothers and the wrong they did in harming you. Now therefore, please forgive the crime of the servants of the God of your father." Joseph wept when they spoke to him. Then his brothers also wept, fell down before him, and said, "We are here as your slaves." But Joseph said to them, "Do not be afraid. Am I in the place of God? Even though you intended to do harm to me, God intended it for good, in order to preserve a numerous people, as he is doing today. So have no fear. I myself will provide for you and your little ones." In this way he reassured them, speaking kindly to them. So Joseph remained in Egypt, he and his father's household, and Joseph lived for 110 years. Joseph saw Ephraim's children of the third generation. The children of Machir, son of Manasseh, were also born on Joseph's knees. Then Joseph said to his brothers, "I am about to die, but God will surely come to you and bring you up out of this land to the land that he swore to Abraham, to Isaac, and to Jacob." So Joseph made the Israelites swear, saying, "When God comes to you, you shall carry up my bones from here." And Joseph died, being 110 years old. He was embalmed and placed in a coffin in Egypt. The words of God for the people of God. Thanks be to God. So we finish up the book of Genesis. There we go. Finish up the story of Joseph. It's sort of the summing up of this whole story, right? It's been this long epic and all the things that has happened to Joseph. He brings his family to this place. They set up, and we see what happens because of all of this. Because Joseph was there, because Joseph was able to give the interpretation of the dream to Pharaoh, Pharaoh now has possession of everything in the land, right? All of the livestock are sold to the Egyptians, to Pharaoh, to Joseph, in return for grain. And then the next year, when they're out of livestock, they give up themselves as indentured servants and they sell off their land. And the setup is that from now on, when you have fields, when you have your harvest, 20%, 1/5, 20% goes to Pharaoh, and that will upkeep everything. So this applies to everyone except for the priests and except for the Israelites, who are sort of protected by Joseph. So Pharaoh it's this huge sort of land grab. Pharaoh is now effectively owner of the entirety of Egypt at this point. Then we have what happens to Jacob. Jacob comes and he is so pleased to have his son with him, Joseph, and he spends 17 years there in Egypt, and then he gets sick, and he wants to give a blessing to Joseph's sons. And you notice that he's carrying on some of these really not so great practices that have been going on now for generations, where he goes to bless Manasseh and Ephraim, the sons of Joseph, and he blesses more, gives the right hand offering and blessing to the younger of the two sons, not the older one. Continuing on this sort of favoritism, and this favoritism that doesn't make sense according to the cultural norms. Cultural norms were that the firstborn was to be the favored one, right? And Jacob himself, he was the favorite one, even though he was the younger of the two twins. He stole the birthright of Esau as well as the blessing. Then he went on and gave more blessings and more honor and more sort of praise and love to Joseph, and that didn't go so well either. He's now continuing that on. And then he gathers all of his children around him, and really it's all the sons. The daughter does not get a blessing. But he blesses all of the sons, and most of these blessings are kind of curses. There's a handful, there's Joseph and Judah specifically, that are sort of lifted up as sort of being actually blessed. Some of them are actively cursed, right? This is, for Reuben, he says, all the praise that you've gotten, that's it, that you're done with that. I don't want you to succeed, basically. Laying out all of these things. We might suspect that Judah, because Judah sort of was willing to give himself up as the responsible party to take care of Benjamin and then bring back Joseph, that's the reason. But it's strange. It's perpetuating this sort of really unhealthy dynamic that is going on in this family. But he does this. He blesses all of these, and then he dies. And you notice Joseph has him embalmed. He's mummified according to the Egyptian practice, but Jacob wants Joseph to bring him back to the land of Canaan to be buried with his parents and his parents' parents and one of his wives at least. And so they embalm him, they grieve for him, and then they take this huge procession of all these Egyptian folks as well as the Israelites all the way back up to Canaan. So much it makes such a huge spectacle that the Canaanites think that there's this great and mighty person of the Egyptians has died, and they're grieving for him so much. They bury him there, and then they come back, and Joseph's brothers are afraid because Joseph now has nothing to lose. Arguably before, he could have just gone along and not taken out his revenge on the brothers because of their father and all that sort of stuff. But now the father's dead. He is in charge of everything. And they come to him and they say, make up this lie that our father said that you should forgive us. And he says, you just don't get it. In fact, he weeps. This is Joseph is very in touch with his emotional side, right? He weeps multiple times through all this. But he weeps here because he has come to this understanding that while they meant this for harm, it does not mean that they are sort of forgiven or that, it's good for them to have done this terrible thing. That's not what he's saying. But that even though you meant this for good, for bad, God meant this for good. God was at work in all of this. And in fact, God was preserving not only me, but also you, and also the known world, because this famine has affected everyone. And if I was not here, who knows what could have happened, right? So Joseph looks at his whole life and says, God was at work in all of this. He looks back and he sees that there's only one set of footprints and that God was carrying him, right? From the footprint story type thing. He looks back and he sees what has gone on through all of this. And he says, why don't you get this? Right? Of course I forgive you. I'm not going to take this out on you. I'm going to watch over you. I'm going to take care of you. I'm going to take care of your kids. I'm going to take care of your kids' kids. I'm going to watch over you and make sure that you're well protected. And he weeps and they weep. And there's this beautiful moment where they gather together. And God preserves the life of the people there in Israel. By the time that Joseph dies, he gets to see the third generation after him. They're all there in Egypt, and God is bringing life about, multiplying and bringing multitudes of people from these Israelites. So God begins, or the story of Genesis starts with God creating and being fruitful and multiplying, and it ends here with God creating this people and a fruitfulness and a multiplicity. And yet God working through deeply flawed, really broken people and family systems and all sorts of things. The major tension here at the end of Genesis is that these people are outside of the land that God promised them. They're not in Egypt, or they are in Egypt. They're not in Canaan, which is a major plot point for the next book, which is Exodus, which we will be looking at next week. So there you go. That's the end of the book of Genesis. Thank you for joining me today for this week of readings, but also today's readings. If you have any questions or comments, please give them. Like this video, share it with someone else. Click on the subscription and the notification button. Go to our website, johncalvinchurch.org, for more information. Join us for worship tomorrow morning at 10:30, and we will gather together. Also, we'll have Adult Sunday School, and that is at 9:30. Yes. That is also available on Zoom, and if you don't have that link, let me know, and I can give that to you as well. Yep, those are all the things. Oh, our readings came from the New Revised Standard Version of the Bible. Thank you so much for joining me. Have a blessed day, and we'll see you next time.